Hi, Anesca Smith from Media 24 newspapers. I was wondering, Mr. Miliband, whether the G20 countries can afford to continue lending its support to Africa, given that many of these countries face their own worst financial crisis.
I think it's very significant that this G20 meeting on April the 2nd shouldn't just be about the financial structures in the rich countries. It's also about the economic effects of financial market failure in the richer countries on the poorest people in the poorest countries. And that's why the agenda of this summit is in part a follow-up to the Washington summit's discussions of financial regulation. 47 different pieces of work were set in train in November. They need to be followed through in a very detailed way. But the agenda for this summit deliberately raises issues of macroeconomic coordination, issues of development, issues of trade, and issues of how we build a low-carbon recovery, because only a low-carbon recovery can be a sustainable recovery. And that's why I think that the poverty package, the anti-poverty package at the heart of this summit is a very important part of it. The leaders who are gathering will represent 85% of the world's income. And they have to make sure that they speak for 100% of the world's people, especially those in the poorest countries who, through no fault of their own, could end up suffering the greatest losses as a result of this economic crisis.
But is it reasonable from African leaders to expect this, given that many are already behind on the Millennium targets? Is it reasonable for them to expect this?
Well, I think it's very important that we continue to hold fast to the Millennium Development Goals. Those were goals set for 2015. We're off track in a number of respects. That's why our Prime Minister has been making such a feature of this issue, both at the UN General Assembly last September, the special meeting that was held, and in the run-up to this summit. In Britain, we are determined to continue to raise our development budget, even at a time of economic crunch, and that's a part of our commitment to a globally fair outcome. But it's also a sense of self-interest, because actually the truth about the modern world is that we have to prosper together. And that's why I think that the voice of the developing world is going to be very important at this summit. The presence of South Africa, but also the presence of the AU, the African Union, is, I think, very important. No taxation without representation is an old slogan, but it's a very important one that needs to be put into practice. And I think the representation of the developing world at this G20 level is very significant, because the truth is the G8 can't solve the problems of the modern world on their own. They need wider contribution, not least from countries like South Africa.